exercise extreme caution in the way we celebrate Christmas. We can celebrate it sensibly, but we have to be extremely cautious in the way we behave.
We now go to the Leader of the Opposition, Right Honourable Keir Starmer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I join the Prime Minister in his good wishes to all the staff, to the armed forces and our emergency services? And can I thank you, Mr. Speaker, and the House authorities for doing all that you've done this year to keep Parliament safe and open in challenging circumstances. Mr. Speaker, since this
keep
is
using the word safe,
the last PMQs of the year,
safe,
I want to look at some of the decisions the Prime Minister has made in the last 12 months. Let me start at the beginning of the pandemic, when images from hospitals in Italy and Spain were being shown on our televisions and the infection rates were rising in the UK. Does the Prime Minister now accept that his slowness to respond
led to more deaths,
a longer lockdown and a deeper economic damage?
Haircut for a fucking mop.
Mr. Speaker, no, because at every stage we followed the scientific guidance.
Money he's got and can't afford a fucking comb.
And he's right to draw attention to what's happening across the whole of Europe, and indeed there are spikes now taking place across the whole of the EU, and thanks to the tiering system that we have in place in large parts.
No spikes happening in Parliament, no.
People of the
no spikes happening to these people. See these kind of people.
Coming down. And yes,
all famous people.
Now
you had COVID, not one died.
But we will make sure that with our adjustments to the tiering,
don't need an injection for all these famous people.
Few weeks, but we will address those issues. That is the right way forward for this country. That's how we'll defeat the virus, with vaccines, with community testing, and with tough tiering. And I think what people would like to hear in this season of goodwill to all men is a little bit of support from the right honourable
season of health
for what the government is trying to do to beat coronavirus, and perhaps just a little less carping.
Yes, Starmer.
Well, Mr. Speaker, if the Prime Minister won't listen to me, can I quote his own spending watchdog, the Office of Budget Responsibility? Because they said the UK locked down later and for longer than some of its European neighbours and experienced a deeper fall and slower economic recovery. Mr. Speaker, this isn't bad luck. It's not inevitable. It's a result of the Prime Minister's choices. But if the Prime Minister disagrees with me, perhaps he can tell us, why does he think that Britain, the sixth richest country in the world, with all our brilliant scientists and amazing NHS, ends the year with one of the highest numbers of COVID deaths in Europe, over 64,000, each one leaving a grieving family, and the deepest recession.
Read out the list of everyone else who's died of every other ailment, what people die of every year.
Well, Mr. Speaker, the highest
we won't hear that.
Change of tune in his criticisms of the.
How many people have died of cancer this year?
Performance, but perhaps he could
brain tumours, strokes, heart attack.
Why the UK is the first to produce a viable treatment for coronavirus in the form of dexamethasone, or the first country in the world to roll out a clinically tested stage 3 vaccine. Mr. Speaker, this is a pandemic that has affected.
That's because the British people are that fucking dumb.
And
they're stupid.
Has continued to take
they haven't rose to this fucking maniac occasion.
Without wishing to.
That's what these people are to me. They're the maniacs.
Of the right honourable gentleman, I would take his criticisms of the UK government's decisions a little more seriously, frankly. If he had been able to decide last week or even the week before whether he even supported the approach we were taking or opposed it. He couldn't do either, Mr. Speaker. He abstained.
Mr. Speaker, I said 2 weeks ago at this dispatch box that I was very concerned that Tier 2 would not be strong enough to hold the virus. The Prime Minister said, don't worry about that, just support us, throw away
these two are on the same card. They're both buddies. It's all a show.
Tier 3, and I'll come back to that. But if the Prime Minister thinks
they're all on the same card, they're in the same gang, pretending to fight each other in here when they're not. They both got the same end goal. They're both in for the lockdown. They're both into the collapse of the society, the collapse of Britain, collapse of businesses, closure of the pubs.
This plan would suppress the virus. But the latest figures show the opposite. And the Prime Minister said spikes here and there. Let me tell the House.
The pubs have been the target, haven't they?
Tier 2 areas,
they still are now.
Infections are going up.
Definitely won't get rid of the pubs.
Half of the tier 3 areas.
Socialising areas.
Going up. Exactly the concern I put to the Prime Minister 2 weeks ago when he said, just back us anyway. As a result, this morning, 10 million people moved into tougher restrictions. Exactly what we said would happen, going up the tiers. Does the Prime Minister not recognise that his latest plan has once again failed to control the virus, protect the NHS and our economy?
Fuck off.
Well, Mr. Speaker, once again he criticises the government's plans without producing...
What you're looking at here, they are the fucking virus.
Actually, if you look at what
every bastard in Parliament. They're not representing us, they represent themselves. They're the fucking virus.
In Wales, Mr. Speaker. But if you look at what is happening across the country, it is thanks to the efforts of the British people that we are seeing significant reductions in the virus in some of the areas where it was really surging, and that is because
it's so cold, Mr. Johnson. It's so cold. It's a normal cold flu what everyone gets every year. Year in, year out. What is it that he doesn't understand?
Community testing, Mr. Speaker.
But he knows this, doesn't he? He knows this, and we know he knows this.
Those wonderful initiatives, supporting community testing, encouraging
what a massive deception.
Encouraging people to get a vaccine rather than continually attacking what the NHS and what the government is trying to do.
Everybody's had the vaccine every time I've stood up and talked about it.
Oh, it's a crime, all right. It's a crime to
in some places, Prime Minister, in the last 7
attack
days,
the government for what they're doing on the British people.
The Prime Minister is yet again pretending it isn't. Another major mistake of the last 12 months. Losing public trust. We all know what the
losing
was.
Fucking losing.
The
fucking hell, I lost my fucking trust years ago.
Barnard Castle.
About 20 years ago.
The humiliating way in which the Prime Minister and his cabinet chose to defend it. But now we learn that while the Prime Minister and the Chancellor are telling the armed forces, police officers, care workers and firefighters that they will get a pay freeze, Dominic Cummings has been handed at least a £40,000 pay rise. How on earth?
Nice pat on the back, ain't it, Cummings? Nice pat on the back there, you've done a good job there, son.
Mr. Speaker,
nice pat on the back there for Dominic Cummings.
The efforts of the
and likely Matt Hancock. They'll get another pay rise as well after everyone's been vaccinated. Part of the share in the fucking vaccine.
None of the measures, none of the lockdown measures have worked.
And we'll talk about fucking Matt Hancock having shares in the fucking vaccine. He'll have a nice little pay rise, won't he?
Once again, to get the virus under
more people that take the shot.
A huge amount of progress. We will continue with that tiering system, and we will get that virus down. And that is the best way forward for this country.
They're not interested in telling us that get this virus down. Everyone's social distance. Everyone's worn a mask.
And then, Mr. Speaker,
and we're at this stage now.
The economic consequences of lockdown.
7 or 8 months later, and he's done nothing, supposing that there was a virus out there. What was the purpose of the mask in the lockdown then?
Put it on the table and voted for it. Ridiculous. It's exactly the problem what we've
solved nothing, has it, in the event of a real pandemic?
Obviously, we know about Dominic Cummings. It wasn't performance-related pay, Mr. Speaker. But I think the British people will find it pretty hard to understand why it's one rule for our key workers and another for his advisors. And it's now likely that the next big mistake will be over the easing of restrictions over Christmas. And this isn't smarmy lawyers. Let me give you the British Medical Journal. The British Medical Journal yesterday said this: we believe the government is about to blunder into another major error that will cost many lives.
Oh, it already has. It already has.
Not just
more people have died through the lockdown.
If he really is going to press ahead with this,
than any virus can.
Tell us, what's the assessment, and has it been done, of the impact
genocidal murder
on infection rates and
suicides? Let's talk about suicides.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I wish he'd had the guts just to say what he really wants to do.
Look at the fucking state of that. Look at fucking that. What a fucking mess.
Cancel Christmas. That's really that's what he's driving at, Mr. Speaker.
What a mop.
He's looking a bit blank. I think that's what he's driving at. But I can tell him that as of today, and just this morning, there is actually, as I say, unanimous agreement across all the UK government, across all the devolved administrations, including members of all parties, Mr. Speaker, including his own, that we should proceed in principle with the existing regulations.
Looks like he's had a fucking pan put on top of his head and trimmed all around below the fucking pan.
Plans, Mr. Speaker, but we do think it's absolutely vital that people should, at this very, very tricky time, exercise a high degree of personal responsibility, especially when they come into contact with elderly people, and avoid contact with elderly people wherever possible. And that is how...
Oh, elderly people, yeah. The most vulnerable.
Cautious,
not in their eyes, it isn't. The people they want fucking eliminate.
Well, that's the only implication I can draw from what he said.
Think we're fucking stupid. Well, most of us are, aren't we, really? Let's fucking face it. Let's face it. 95% of the fucking population are dumb fucks, truly, aren't they?
Again, Mr. Speaker.
They haven't even smelt the fucking coffee.
And we know where that leads, because we've seen what happened in the last 9 months. And whatever the Prime Minister says, there's no escaping the brutal facts that Britain has one of the highest number of COVID deaths in Europe and the worst economic...
No, natural deaths. Let's correct that, natural deaths.
Last PMQs of the year.
No one has died of what you're telling us what they died of.
Gets his advice from. Well, now I know, because I've heard the official newsletter of the Wellingborough Conservative Party. It's not on everyone's...
I wonder how many people have died from mechanical injuries.
Read.
Road accidents.
There's a lot of advice to wannabe politicians.
Well, the answer's 0 this year.
It says this.
If you want to believe that.
The first thing that comes into your head. It'll probably be nonsense. You may get a bad headline, but if you make enough dubious claims fast enough, you can get away with it. And it includes the December edition. The advice. Sometimes it's better to give the wrong answer at the right time rather than the right answer at the wrong time. So, my final question to the Prime Minister is this. Is he the inspiration for the newsletter, or is it the author?
Don't they know you how they pretend they're fighting with each other?
Well, Mr. Speaker,
Good now they're all laughing in there, innit, while we're all fucking in lockdown. They're all finding, having a nice big joke in there, finding all this lockdown is very funny. They're ignoring what life everyone's living. Loved ones in nursing homes and people can't see the loved ones. Families can't go and fucking kiss the older people of relatives in nursing homes, and these people are... So a disgrace that these people even find 1 second to even laugh in Parliament at the expense of the people.
He can't attack the government.
Disgrace.
The government if he can't come up with a view.
We're not saying people shouldn't laugh at Christmas, but I think they're forgetting here what sort of state this country is now in.
Mr. Speaker, and it'd be wonderful if he can produce one. This government is getting on with delivering on the people's priorities.
People's priorities? Oh, thanks, Boris.
More nurses, 48 new hospitals.
Priorities to lock us all down and stop us all going for a pint, is it?
Has been very tough.
That's the top priority.
Everybody appreciates the suffering and hardship that the people of this country have been going through.
No, you don't appreciate it. You've orchestrated it.
Rolling out the vaccine by community.
How can they appreciate it when they've orchestrated it? It's fucking lies.
Supports. We are going to defeat coronavirus, Mr. Speaker, and we're going to take this country forward into a great 2021.
Bullshit.